Hello, and welcome to the first in a series of video tutorials about BlueDaBaDee, which is a tool I created to help you train with finding, exploiting, and patching vulnerabilities. So I've been working on this project for a bit. Here is the GitHub. Let's link to it so you can see all the cool code. And the name BlueDaBaDee, if you've been part of UFSIT long enough, then you'll get the reference. Anyways, why BlueDaBaDee? What is it in the first place? So the idea is I want to make something so that you could practice whatever vulnerability you wanted, whenever, wherever. You don't have to worry about setting up a network or waiting for someone else to spin up an image and misconfigure it for you. It would just be a script that you can run locally, and it just puts vulnerabilities there. So you can practice patching vulnerabilities on your own whenever you want. So some benefits about doing this approach is that one, it's replicable. We can practice the same vulnerability over and over again, and we know it'll be the same thing each time because it's a script. So this kind of lets us ensure that we're covering all of our bases and we have everything handled. Another thing is it simplifies testing on new distros. The reason being that I wrote this in the most compatible version possible. For example, Linux and BSD are using SH. Meanwhile, for PowerShell, I'm using PowerShell v3. So the idea is that these scripts are going to work on whatever distro you want. And we've tested on a lot of things, including Reptilian OS, so it seems promising. And the great thing about this is that in competitions like CCDC, they could throw any distro they want at you. So you want to make sure that your methods work on any sort of environment. So I'm saving you the trouble of figuring out how to implant these vulnerabilities on all of these different distros. Instead, we just have one centralized place where we can just, boom, put that vulnerability on the machine and practice our skills patching it. And the last benefit of doing it this approach is that we can continuously expand on our knowledge base. As you'll see, I made this whole thing very modular, so it's super easy to add a new vulnerability if you wanted to. And down here, you can see the output of what it looks like. So whenever you run it, when you run the plant script, you can see it plants all the vulnerabilities on your machine. And then we have this checker that tells you your progress. So here, you can see I patched one of the vulnerabilities, and that's only 1 out of 3. I still got more work to do. But if I don't know what's going on, I need some help, I can cheat, and it'll give me pointers. And so that can help me go towards completely patching everything. So the idea here is to make it really easy for you guys to train on your vulnerabilities. So let's talk about how to actually use this. Sub-0, you want to install a virtual machine. The reason being, you don't want to plant vulnerabilities on your local machine. That is a bad idea because you don't want to be vulnerable. So we highly recommend you first install a VM. And there's a bunch of different options. You could do VirtualBox, which is probably the most popular option because of operating systems. We have VMware. Specifically, VMware Workstation Pro is now free. And this is what I'll be using in these videos. And lastly, you can use QEMU, which is something specific to Unix systems. It is more efficient than the other two options, but also harder to set up. But for all of these 3 options, we'll be posting tutorial videos so that you can go ahead and install a VM locally. And as you can see down here, I have my VMware with just a Ubuntu image on it, and that's what I'm going to do. So to get started with BlueDaBaDee, it's very simple. We just clone the repo. So git clone github.com pukey BlueDaBaDee.git, and you'll see it clones it. And now I have the repo. If git isn't available, you could always crawl the zip file and unpackage it manually, but that's annoying, so let's do git. And once we go inside there, you'll see we have 3 different folders, one for Linux, BSD, and Windows. So we're kind of breaking everything down into 3 different types of systems. That's how you can categorize all these things. You have Windows, and you have Linux, and then you have BSD, which is Linux's weird cousin. So let's talk about how each of these works. I'm going to begin by going into Linux. So let's check the Linux machine, and let's see there's a lot of files there. What does this mean? Let's dive into it. So on Linux, how vulnerabilities work is we have 3 separate files managed in it. There's one file that defines the vulnerabilities, which is config.txt. We have another file that plants the vulnerabilities, preplant.sh. And lastly, we have a checker that checks if the vulnerability has been patched or not, which is checker.sh. And so each of these have their own format. For a vulnerability, you only need to worry about these 3 parts. So this is more on the administrative side, the scripting side, if you want to include a new vulnerability into BlueDaBaDee. If you're just here to learn and practice the vulnerabilities, you can skip this section because this isn't about practicing, it's about building on the tool. So let's talk about this. Inside your config file, you're going to have a list of all your vulnerabilities, where it's the module, the difficulty, and the name. So the modules are basically how we group the vulnerabilities. So you can see here, I grouped these vulnerabilities for Linux into 3 different modules. One for users, one for permissions, and one for the system. So here we have the module name, and then we have this difficulty. The difficulty is number from 1 to 5, where 1 is easiest and 5 is hardest. And lastly, the vulnerability name. And that is how this file is organized. Now let's look at the preplant. So you'll see there's a bunch of code that does all the things, but what really matters for us is these functions here. You'll notice that each function name is literally just the name of the vulnerability. So you have the vulnerability name and then the code inside which plants that vulnerability. And so that's how you're going to organize this. Now for the checker, it's a similar idea, except there's a bit more syntax involved. So here, again, we just have the function name is the name of our vulnerability. And then inside here, you have this if statement. So here I'm using a function I wrote called check. And how this works is this right here, this first string, is the command you're going to use to check if the vulnerability is still on the system. And so this is going to return either a Boolean true or false. And this right here is what you expect it to return. So in this case, I expect Jotaro to have an X in their Etsy password. So I'm going to make this true. And so if it returns true, then I know it's been patched. Meanwhile, down here, it's false, because when I'm grepping Etsy group here, I expect Jolene to not have sudo wheel. I expect this to return false if it's been patched, which is why it says false here. And then lastly, you have this string here, which serves as a sort of hint as to what the vulnerability is. So you'll notice if we go back to here, I had these little descriptions. That's what that last string is. So that's how the vulnerabilities work. There's 3 parts to it. The config defines them, the preplant plants it, and the checker checks it. Pretty simple, pretty easy to build on. So that's it for the sysadmin stuff. Now let's talk about actually using this. So there's 3 steps on the Linux side. First, you pick which vulnerabilities you want, then you plant them, then you patch them. And you can see it's just 3 simple commands for you. First is picking it. So we saw that we had all of these different vulnerabilities in the config file. But the cool thing about BlueDaBaDee is you can select specific ones from here. So if I were to pick, it's going to tell us it's picking all vulnerabilities from difficulty 1 to difficulty 5. And you'll see there's this new file, currentset.txt. And it's the same exact format, looks the same. So these are all of the vulnerabilities that I have selected that I want to train on. But we can do something more specific than that. So there's a few flags we support. One of them is D for difficulty. And so here you can put either a single number, for example 2, and you can see it's only selecting vulnerabilities of difficulty 2. If I look here, you see all of them have difficulty 2. So that's pretty cool. But you can also do a range, for example 2 to 4. And you'll see it's everything 2 to 4. And if I look at my current set, you'll see I have 2s, but also 3s and 4s. So it's picking only the vulnerabilities in that difficulty range. Makes it nice because if you're just starting out, you can just do the difficulty 1s. Meanwhile, if you're a veteran, you could just do just the difficulty 5s. So that's the difficulty flag. We also have the module flag, or TAC-M. And so how this works is this is going to be a list, a comma-separated list of the names. And so it can be names of, let me go ahead and pull up the config just so we can see. It could be group names, module names, or it could be the individual vulnerability name. So for example, I could do, let's say I want to pick all of the user vulnerabilities and also the CapCat vulnerability. So I run this, and again, I didn't specify difficulty, so it's doing all of them. And if I look at my set, we see I have all of the users, and then the permission, the CapCat one that I specified. So that is how module selection works. Great if you want to test specific skills. And lastly, we have this randomizer flag. So if I did pick, and let's do nothing, so it will select out of all possible modules. Let's do random 7. So what this is going to do is, out of all the valid vulnerabilities, it is going to choose 7 of them at random. So if I look at my current set, you'll see I only have 7 here. And I could do 3 if I wanted to. And you'll see here it's only 3. So this is great if you want to spice things up, have something new present to you every time. Lets you limit it to certain vulnerabilities at random. So those are the 3 flags, and we can chain these together. For example, let's say I wanted to pick all from 2 to 4 from the module user or CapCat. And let's say I'm going to test on 5 of them. And so if I look at my current set, we see exactly that. The users and the permissions from the range 2 to 5, and there's only, 2 to 4, and there's only 5 of them listed, even though there's definitely more vulnerabilities available. And if I were to run it again, hopefully we get a different set. I don't know if that's different or not. Hopefully it is. But it's going to be random each time. So yeah, that's picking the vulnerabilities. And so what this is going to do is it's basically you saying, hey, BlueDaBaDee, these are the things I want to test right now. It's going to say, okay. Then we can plant those vulnerabilities. So I have this setup script here. So it's pretty simple. You just need to be sudo and run in it. And actually, I'm already root, so I don't need to say sudo. But if I set up, what it's going to do is, 1, it's going to set up all of your services. So here, right now we just have users as part of our services. But later on, as we start having things like FTP, SSH, DNS, VNC, all those different services, this setup script is also going to set those up automatically, so you don't have to worry about that. So it's going to do that, and then it's going to plant all the vulnerabilities you selected. So just as a reminder, I'm going to go ahead and pick everything. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pick everything just to demonstrate to you guys what everything looks like. And let's go ahead and sudo setup. And it tells us, oh, awesome. This is the practice network. Here are the rules for your network. This is an admin user, and these are regular users. And they should be part of the Joestar group. So this is basically, in CCDC, they'll give you some information about your network. This is basically what that is. What is supposed to be on your network and what is supposed to be allowed. And then after that, it goes and it does all the vulnerabilities. And so you can see here, some of them didn't work because files don't exist. And it just tells you, hey, this was skipped. So just by running that command, now all of these vulnerabilities are now on my machine, which is crazy. So now comes the fun part, us trying to fix it. And as we're making progress and we're fixing things, we want to have some way to check how we're doing. And so that's what this checker script is. And so just to demonstrate how it works, I run checker and it goes boom. And so we can see here, it has, that's a bug, I'll fix it. But here, the tests that weren't properly implemented, it already says it's passing. So out of 15 vulnerabilities, I passed only one of them. And out of 11 vulnerabilities, I passed 3 of them. So there's other things I haven't figured out yet. And so I could do some threat hunting on my machine. For example, I could look at Etsy password and I could realize that, oh, Jotaro doesn't have, it's empty here. I need to add it. And also this corn poops user, that's not real. I'm going to get rid of that. Actually, there's another thing. Yeah, Joseph, his UID is 0, so let me fix that. And if you don't know what this means, don't worry about it. We'll have tutorials later. I just wanted to demonstrate that now when I run my checker, you'll see all of those things I fixed are now identified. So now I've solved 3 out of 15. I'm making progress. Yippee! But let's say that I've been working at this for a few hours and I'm just stuck. I don't know where to go. I'm about to give up. I want a little hint. So what I can do is I can cheat. I can run this tax C flag and cheat. When I do that, it tells me everything that's on the system. It gives me a tiny hint as to what needs to be done. So for example, these other ones, okay, I need to look into Joseph, and you look into Jolene and Jonathan and Josuke. Okay. These are all the things that I need to look into. And from there, I could do some Googling, or I could look at the tutorial videos to try and figure out how do I patch these. So that is everything for Linux. Those are the 3 steps. First, you pick your vulnerabilities, then you plant them, and finally you patch them. So now, let me go ahead and talk about Windows. So Windows is working. So here I have this Windows thing. And you'll notice that for Linux, I had a bunch of different files. And that's just what made sense for Linux. But in Windows, it's pretty chill. I just have one PowerShell script that does everything. And so you'll see inside this PowerShell script, there's a few things to note. Again, the vulnerabilities are modular. It's supposed to be easy to add to it. And so here's how it works. We have this array of objects, or rather a list of objects, where each one is a vulnerability. And so I specify the name, the module, and the difficulty, like before. Here is an array, or rather a hash map, of the scripts to plant those vulnerabilities. And you'll see here, I just have some dummy scripts because I'm just testing. This is a proof of concept right now. And so you can see those are the commands to plant it. And lastly, we have this check vulns hash map, which again, for each vulnerability name, we have the function to check if it's still there. Okay, cool. So that's how Windows work. Again, it's that same idea of we define everything, we plant everything, and we check everything. But now it's just all in the same place. So for the using the Windows thing, again, it's simpler. It's just one script. So we have these flags, plant and check, action, all these different flags. So you'll notice from before, we still have that modules flag, where it's the list of modules. And now difficulty is split into a minimum difficulty and a max difficulty. So let me go ahead and let me boot up a Windows machine first that we can use, and I'll demonstrate how this script works. And like I mentioned before, we also have BSD, but BSD works pretty much exactly the same as Linux, so I won't bother going over it. And while that loads, let me talk about knowledge, where you can learn more while using this tool. So how can you learn more about vulnerabilities and how to fix them? Here are some resources. If you are a member of the team UFSIT, you have access to our private notes repo. If you're not access, that's all right. You still have other resources. For example, these slides that I'm showing you right now, I will link them in the description to this video. It's publicly viewable and it contains all of the info involved in BlueDaBaDee. And again, I have the YouTube tutorials where I'm going to go vulnerability by vulnerability and walk through all of them. So ideally, this should pretty much teach you everything you need to know. And again, besides that, the huge thing about cybersecurity is most of your knowledge comes from self-studying. So these tutorials are going to teach you a lot, but it's not absolutely everything, right? There's always new vulnerabilities to discover. There's always more to learn. You can go into more detail. So where possible, I link to sources of information if you want to dive deeper into something. But besides that, like even I don't know everything. There's a lot of vulnerabilities that I have not included in BlueDaBaDee yet. And so that's where these other things come into play. How can you contribute to this project? How can you contribute to all of us getting smarter? And there's three main ways for that. First, if you're part of UFSIT, you can write playbooks for our team. These playbooks are going to be part of our notes repo, and they're basically a step-by-step guideline of what am I supposed to do when I'm on a machine? How am I supposed to find all of these vulnerabilities and patch them, right? Then another thing you can do, this one is pretty cool, script patching. So in competition environments, you can have a lot of machines. For example, in CCDC, it's now going into the 40s for the southeast region. So in that case, manually going through things step by step is going to be pretty slow. It would be nice if we had a script that does everything automatically, right? I mean, like part of what makes BlueDaBaDee so awesome is everything's scripted, so it's really fast and easy to use. We have scripts for planting, we have scripts for check-in. So next logical step is let's make scripts to fix everything. Wouldn't that be great? So that's one way we can contribute by working on these scripts to patch everything. And then another way you can contribute is as you learn more and discover new vulnerabilities, you can add modules to BlueDaBaDee, right? I discussed how you can add a new vulnerability for either Windows or Linux. Super simple, super modular, very plug and play to do. So if you ever find something cool, go ahead and add a new vulnerability. I would love that. Yeah. And so that's everything about knowledge. So I had to need to install Git first, but now everything's good to go. This is my Windows VM, and you'll see I have Git. So let's just, again, git clone, https, github.com, pukey, BlueDaBaDee.git. And it'll make us that folder. Again, we can go into Windows, and we have our PowerShell script here. So if I just run it off the bat, you'll see it prompts us that I need to supply a parameter. I need to specify the action we want. And so there's two actions. You can either plant if you're planting vulnerabilities, or check in if you're checking for vulnerabilities. So let's go ahead and do plant. And you'll see it plants everything. Right now it's just a proof of concept. So these are dummy vulnerabilities. So yeah, it's again, same idea as the Linux. We can also specify the modules. So for that, the flags are going to be modules. So let me just go ahead and use modules. Let's do all of the cat vulnerabilities. And again, I want to plant. And see, it only does the cat ones. But I can also specify by difficulty. And so for Windows, it's a bit different. We have two flags, one for the minimum difficulty and one for the maximum difficulty. And again, I want to plant. And you see it only did the ones in that range of 2 to 4. So yeah, that's great. Same idea as the other one. And that's how Windows works. So with that being said, that's how you use BlueDaBaDee. And so from now on, I'm going to put out videos going over each single vulnerability. And in each of these videos, we're going to have 3 parts, which will be indicated based on the icon in the bottom right corner over here. So if you see this, it's background. I'm talking about why does this vulnerability exist? How does this certain file or service or part of the system work? If you see the red team logo, that means it's time to exploit. I'm talking about how do we exploit this vulnerability to get a shell on the system, or persist, or escalate, or whatever. And then if you see this icon, it's the defense. How do we patch this vulnerability? And so hopefully by organizing things in this way, it's clear for whatever you need that you have the thing you want. And another cool thing about this is I hyperlinked everything so it connects over. So if I do this, it brings me to all of the user vulnerabilities. So I can, let's say that I want to talk about this one. Brings me directly to the section on it. So actually, let's do this one, okay? You see, it brings me directly into talking about this vulnerability. And I could go on, it's the blue team on how to patch it. But if I want to learn more about like the context, we have this slide. So it's the background, red team, blue team, you know? And once I'm done with that, I click on it, brings me back here. And if I'm done with this, boom, brings me back here. So the idea is this is supposed to be very easy for you to navigate. And hopefully it is. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.